Good morning, everyone. I've just realized that I had my microphone off. Sorry about that. Alrighty, so this is a webinar, which means that I can control the session that that we're having, and what I've done is actually set it up so that your audio is off, and instead of talking, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get you to ask questions in the question box. So down the bottom of the screen there, you'll see that there is a little box that says type question here. So if you can type in your name and your herd code into that question box, that just lets me know that the audio is coming across clearly and that you can use the basic part of the software. So good morning, Sean. Nice to see you there. Who else have we got on the webinar this morning? Just go ahead and type in that type questions here box and go to webinar. While you're doing that, if you do have any technical problems during this session, don't stress at all. The session is being recorded, and we are going to share that recording with you at the end. So no stress at all if you do have some difficulties and don't don't get to participate in everything. Carolyn, great to see you here. Well done on subscribing at that last minute. Sorry I didn't get that invite to you so early. Sandra, hello. Jennifer and Fran. So great, we've got a distribution of people from all over Australia with us this morning. Now, what I'm going to do this morning is I'm actually going to go through partially a presentation and then partially also a walkthrough of the system. So here we go. Hopefully that's what we wanted. Great. So the first part I'm going to do is a presentation, and what that's going to cover is the basic information about the system and where it came from, and then I'm going to get into the demonstration section, which is hopefully going to interest you all a lot more. Okay, and Abby, good to see you here too. All right, so this is our agenda for this morning, and the basic overview about where eAlpaca came from, helping you to know how to log in and navigate, working with the animals functions in the system, and transactions and financial statements, member search and view, your profile and membership. Now, for those of you who are wondering what does it mean that I've signed up to be a trainer, the important thing from my perspective is that at some point over the next month, you have a session with the members of your region and introduce them to eAlpaca. And the goal there is just to get them familiar with it so that they feel comfortable when it comes time for them to use the system, that they've seen a little bit of it before, and particularly the key functions will be familiar to them because you will have walked them through. So there's a lot of functionality and information on this system, and it's not important that you know and learn it all. It's fine if you just focus on the three key things that I'm going to focus on today, which are animal registration, animal transfers, and show entries. So they're the three key things that I think is really important for you to learn about, and the three things that I'm going to spend most of my time on this morning. But I will show you some other functions. In particular, I know everyone will be interested in viewing and searching animals, so we'll spend a bit of time on that as well, and I'll talk a little bit more generally about systems, functions in the system. Does that make sense? Have I generated any questions so far? No questions? Good. Alrighty. So we are going to go into our presentation. Oh, one other thing I just wanted to cover before we go into the presentation is you are not the only part of the support process. So there will be quick reference guides, which are basically a step-by-step guide telling people how to do the various processes, like an animal registration. And there are also videos. There'll be videos to walk people through things, and there will also be some webinars just before we go live. So it's there, and eBlast, and also obviously there's been articles in the Australian Alpaca magazine. So there are a range of communications going on to try and get people engaged and aware of the system. And we'll be at the Australian Alpaca Spectacular in Bendigo. If you do have questions, please send them to the mailing list. That just gives all of us an opportunity to respond to those questions, and also for you to see the answers so that we can kind of share those answers. And if your members have questions, though, they really should contact the national office. But hopefully they won't have questions just yet because we're still getting started. All right, so now let's have a look at the agenda from your perspective. So I've just put there on the right-hand side a little bit more information about what I'm walking through, because from now on, the content that I'm covering is actually going to be the content that I hope that you will also cover in your presentations. And you will get a copy of this slide deck, so you'll be able to use this, and hopefully that will make this process really easy for you. In terms of the history of the system came, well, from requests from members over the last 10 years, but in particular, in 2013-14, there was a strategic marketing plan, 2015, the Member Working Services Party, and 2016, Registry Show and System Survey. And then we've also been going around to shows in Australia and talking with sprint testers in the last 12 months or so. So there's been a lot of feedback to develop this system. The goals of the system are to be simple, so really easy to use and fully self-service, so that you're in control of the information. And we very much want the system to have that balance between rigor and flexibility. So everything is tracked so that we can be sure that things are recorded, but also it's your information so you can manage it. It's future ready, so it's an easy mobile ready system that can work on your mobile phone, your tablet, or your laptop. Well protected through modern practices, and definitely eAlpaca focused. In terms of its functionality, I've got two pictures here that I'm just going to show you that give you an overview of the system. And what I tend to do when I'm doing presentations in person is I actually print these out as double-sided color handouts, and it just gives people a bit of a sense of the system. So you might like to consider doing that. The first page is more of a kind of table format saying the major functions in member, herd, finance, animal, breeding, and shows, and also the system administration functions there on the right in terms of reporting and system management. The other view that I'm showing you now is a map view, and this is a connection between the various parts of the system and how they're linked. So you can see, for example, in the top left-hand corner, that when you register as a member, there is a fee associated with that, so the little dollar sign, and that will then let you do the various functions associated with being a member, including creating another herd, or viewing members, or starting to register animals. So that's how the system connects. So some people find that picture helpful. So they're the two perspectives on the system. In terms of the schedule that we're working towards, we're doing the train the trainer right now. And what we're hoping, as I mentioned earlier, is that you will be able to run a training session with your region in July. And that's just going to prepare people for the go live process in August. In the meantime, members will be using the system between the period of the 7th of July to the 21st of July if they're entering entries into the Australian eAlpaca Spectacular. However, they will only have access to the show entry function in the system. They won't have access to any other part of the system. So that's the only access that they'll have. You'll have access to a different staging system that will allow you to do your training. You can change animals, you can transfer them, you can create them, you can mark them as dead, whatever you like. That won't be permanent. We'll just refresh that environment on a regular basis. So you'll be able to test and demonstrate in a almost live environment that you don't have to worry about what's happening with the data in. Then we're going to be going live, as you will have seen from Fiona's email, around the middle of August, shortly before AAS, and that will be, eAlpaca will then provide the full scope of functionality for the registry and show systems for the AAA. So the old system will then be decommissioned. It will still be available online in a read-only mode. It will no longer get updated, so it won't have any fresh information. But what it will do is provide a record of the system as it was from August 2017 for a year, and that just lets us make people get an opportunity to review against the old system and talk about that. And then at the end of August 2018, that system will be fully turned off, so it will be permanently unavailable. So that's a high view of the schedule. Now let's actually get into the system, which I think is probably what's going to interest you all most. So the system is all web-based, and the first thing that you really need to know is, how do I log in? Now, logging in is not based on your herd code. It's actually based on your email address. And the reason that we've set it up this way is because we want you to be able to have multiple herds with one perspective. So if you log in with your email address and you've got 2 or 3 herds, you'll be able to transfer animals between your herds for free. You'll be able to manage your herds as in a kind of coherent way between your herds. And if you're entering something like a show, you can just enter animals from any of your herd codes. You don't need to kind of specify they're from this herd or from that herd. It just all happens as one. So it's a much more integrated view. It does mean that you'll need to log in with your email address and the password, which I think you've all done. So congratulations. And if people do forget their password, they'll need to reset their password. One important thing to know is when we do get started, nobody will have a password because we're not going to migrate the passwords from the old system. So everybody is going to have to go through that forget password function. I'll be developing a little video to show people how to do that in case they get confused. But essentially, that's how people who use the system for the first time will get onto the system. All right, so let's actually start having a look at that. And I am going to go to the web and bring up eAlpaca. All right. Just while I'm doing that, are there any questions? Is everybody clear on what we've covered so far? Just going to wait a moment and see if anyone's got questions. All good. Thank you, Sandra, for being responsive. Anyone else who's got questions, feel free to pop in. Now we're just going to go through the login process. So there will be a bit more of a fancy screen here. The goal, by the way, is that members will be able to have all access to the functionality. The general public will have a very basic search view, a little bit like the search that you've currently got. That's all that they will be able to do. And we're going to encourage people to have view-only access into the registry, which might cost around $10 a year. And the goal of that is that we can actually see what they're doing in the system. So if you're a general member of the public, we don't know who you are, we can't distinguish you from one person to another. But if you do that view-only access, then we get a sense of, you know, people from Turkey are looking at these kind of animals versus people from America are looking at those kind of animals. So the public view will be quite limited, but it'll be available from this page. And if you're a member, generally you're going to go straight to the login page. And so I'm going to log in as Fiona. So this is Fiona Vanderbeek, and this is her herd, alpacas at Birong. And so I'm logged in. And this is the normal view for a member, is that they're going to see this first page, which we call the dashboard, or you might want to call it the home page. And it has various sections on it. So I'm just going to switch back now to the slide deck so that I can talk through those sections. All right. So the screen is broken up into a range of areas, and I'm just going to walk through them. As I said, you will get a copy of this slide deck. And so if you are in an environment where you don't have good internet connectivity, you'll actually just be able to use the whole slide deck to show the system. You won't actually even have to be online. But I would encourage you, if you do have internet connectivity, to make it a bit more interactive, and you can ask people what kind of animal name to search for and things like that, and they'll feel like they're participating a bit more. So the dashboard, at the top of the screen, navigation bar and functions. So this is just basically logging in and logging out, and you can also search for animals there. On the in the next part down of the screen, we've got these quick access buttons. So these are the functions that we think that you're going to be using regularly, and so we've made them available to you to a bit more accessible. That's not helpful. All right, and then left bar navigation. So these are the functions that are available to you all the time throughout the system for quick access to the major parts of the system. If you do enter into a transaction, we turn that off, just because in general, if you're doing something like registering an animal, you want to be finishing that process before you then go and navigate through the system. And then the next part down on the screen is the recent activity summaries. So you can see recent activity, which is transactions that you're doing in the system or financial transactions that you've paid for on the left, and on the right-hand side shows that are open for entry and show results that you can view. And then finally down the bottom, there's some summary information around financials and shows and herds. So that is the view of the system from the home page. All right, so that, oh, sorry, one more thing. There is a drop-down navigation in the top right there, and it basically lets you navigate back to edit your profile, view your financials. If you're a convener, you'll have access to convener functions there. If you're a member of the board, you'll have access to board functions there, and then you can also log out. So that's the dashboard and all the functionality on the screen. There is a little question mark in the top right, which will give you some help about that page, and there is also a little icon there for transactions. So I'm just going to stay in the slide deck just for one more set of screens, and then we'll go live into the system, and we'll stay in the system from there. So the other thing that I just wanted to show you is, in terms of searching in the system, there are three kinds of searching. So there are animals, there are members, and there are transactions. So the first kind of searching is animals, which you can do by typing into that little search box at the top, or clicking on the search button. The second kind of searching that you can do is searching for members. So if you look down on the left-hand side of your screen, you'll see there's a little orange button there because it's being hovered over, and that's called members, and then you'll be able to click and search for members there. The third kind of searching is around transactions. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, everything that you do in the system is tracked. So you can change the color of your animal, but we keep track of the previous color, and we also record the fact that you changed that color. So we're trying to give you control of the information as much as possible, but at the same time, we're also trying to provide audit trails to ensure that the data is rigorous. And so what you'll see in that transactions little envelope there is transactions that are waiting for you. This might be transactions that let you that you're involved in. So somebody sold something to you, and you need to pay for the animals to complete the transaction, or it might be a transaction that you've started and you haven't finished. So they're the transactions that are waiting for you. Otherwise, down there in that recent activity box is all the transactions you've done in the system. So changing the color of an animal, or you know, changing your address, anything like that, we record just to make it clear that you are can know what's happened in your system. All right, so now back to the web. So we're now on the site, and I'm just going to introduce you to some basic information for you. So the thing that you're probably most interested in is My Animals. So if you click on the My Animals button, you're going to get a list of all of the animals in your herd, and you will be able to click on those animals and view them. So one of the things I'd just like to make you aware of across the whole site is that all of our tables are sortable. So you'll see that there's a little drop-down link here, a little kind of arrow pointing downwards, and that just means that that's the sorting that's currently applying to that column. So if I click like this, it's sorting up, and if I click like that, it's sorting down. So now we can see that it's going from W to A. So you can sort by color, you can sort by sex, and so this is just another way of kind of browsing animals both in your herd but also in search results, also when you're doing entries or when you're registering animals, all of those kind of things. Anytime you've got a list of information you're dealing with, you can sort that list by different things to make it easier for you to manage. You'll see also that there's some cases here where there are multiple names listed, so that's a case of an animal that is owned by multiple people, and you can click through and view information about them. Hopefully you've had a chance to have a quick play with the animal bit so that you'll be familiar with this first part of the page. So the basic first part of an animal information page is information about the animal's breeder, its owner, its identity number, and sex, color, and so forth. So it's just a basic profile of the animal. And then also at the top, once again, we've got these quick access buttons for things that you might like to do with this animal. This animal has already been certified, but if it was a male that hadn't been certified, we'd see a request for certification button there as well. And if it was a multiply owned animal, we'd have a different transfer button there. So there are various functions available that are specific to the animal and its gender. As I said, you can edit the animal if it's yours. You can't edit other people's animals. And there are only certain fields that you're allowed to edit. So down the bottom of the screen here, you'll see that there are some fields that you can edit by request. These are the fields that are restricted, so things like date of birth or basic information about the animal's identity and registration. So we want to, again, keep that rigor around there, but again, give you the flexibility to manage your information. So the that button will then take you to a screen where you can fill in the form, you can type whatever you like, but it goes to the national office. So I'll just show you that. Click on request to change details. So I can change any of these details around this animal, but at the bottom, I need to say, why am I making these changes? So anything is available to you to change, but only if you explain why. Otherwise, the national office might be curious as to why you're changing the date of birth of an animal just before a show entry. All right, but basic information like its breed, perhaps you made a mistake in registering it as a Surya or a Kaya, or you want to indicate that it's castrated, or you want to say that it's died or been exported or registered for non-breeding or sold. So one thing of interest there in terms of the non-breeding is that this is something that you can control. So as a member, you can say, I don't actually think this animal should ever be used to be bred. And then from then on, it is permanently marked as non-breedable. You can change that as the person who set that, but nobody else can change it. So this just gives you the capacity to be able to say, look, I think this animal has genetic defects and really shouldn't be a breedable animal. So again, giving you that control over your herd. You can add electronic ear tags, so for people who are involved in NLIS, microchip numbers, and you can change the color. Do be aware that if you choose solid, you can only have one color, and that color can't be roan or gray. So you'll see that an error message comes up, and that's because the AAA have defined a policy that the solid prefix or color type defines uniformity of color through the whole fleece. And so even if your color looks the same, the actual solidness defines what fleece colors are in the fleece. So roans and greys actually have white or other different colors in them, so they're not solid, even if they're uniform. So there's that contrast. So the solid thing will only apply to colors that are not roan or grey. Even if your animal is of a uniform color, the solid doesn't apply. So you won't be able to do any colors. So if you do have one of those, you'd have to make it a blank or a fancy or a tuxedo or an Appaloosa to be able to then choose the rose grey or roan or other greys and or to have multiple colors. All right, so I'm now back on the profile screen. So we've done the edit. Now, one of the questions you might have about edit is that how does this work with certificates? Because if I change the color and I've got a printed certificate, now the printed certificate's out of date. Excellent question. So the answer to that question is that the certificates are digital. So at any point in time, you as the owner can download that certificate. I'm trying to drag the screen across. Oh, that's interesting. It's not. Why is that not showing? Anyway, so there is a PDF certificate here that I am desperately trying to show to you, and it looks exactly like the normal certificate, but what it has is a little version number on it, and you'll see on the screen here that that version number is represented on there. So if you see a PDF printed certificate that has version number 2 and the animal on the eAlpaca has version number 3, you'll realize that that's not the latest version. All right. So the next part of the screen is the pedigree view. And so this is an overview of the entire history of that animal. So I'm just going to make this a bit smaller. This will mean that some of you can't see the text clearly, but that's okay. I just want to demonstrate the functionality of this pedigree viewer. What it does is it actually lets you scroll through the entire pedigree history. So I'm going to scroll right now, and you'll see that I can keep going right in this. I'm following the dam's history. So the dam and then the grandmother and so forth up the female lineage. And you'll see that I can go all the way up to the Peruvian sire and dam and the generic Peruvian sire and dam. So, and then I can scroll forward and I can do the same on the sire's tree. And if I scroll all the way to the left, then I go back to the actual animal. So that's the pedigree viewer. Provides a lot of control and information and being able to see all of your pedigree for that animal all the way back to everything, all the information we have in the registry. Now, in terms of progeny, so this sire has had 2, 4, 6, 7 progeny, And again, as I said, this is a sortable table, so if you'd like to see what kind of color the sire is throwing off, then you can do so. And if you want to sort by gender, you can do as well. If you want to sort by age and see how often it's being used for breeding, you can do that. So there's a range of ways that you can look at this information to get a bit of a sense of a sire. In terms of the information around the sire and the dam, there's that same kind of preview box to look at the sire and dam's information in a bit more detail. And then if you want to view it in full, you can view full profile. Down the bottom here is some information partially which will only be shown to the actual owner. So here we have the show results, the change history, and the ownership history. Everyone can see the ownership history, but only the owner of this animal will be able to see the show results and the change history on this page. The show results will be available in the show system for people to search, but just on the profile pages, they'll only be available to the owner. And that just helps people to realize it's not necessarily a mark of quality, it's just information about that animal, because not all animals are entered into shows. And so the profile is largely focused around the pedigree rather than necessarily the quality of the animal. So that is a view of the animal profile page, and we did that from the My Animals page, but the other part of that also is searching. So I'm now going to start to go back to the home page, and one of the things I just want to let you know is in the top left-hand corner there is the logo. That is clickable, and that will take you back to the home page. So I often use that to navigate back, as well as that little home icon. Now, the top left-hand corner, probably the most common used function in the system, will be searching for animals, or I could search up here as well. I'm going to go there because I just want to show you the 3 different kinds of searches we have. So there is search, the default search is a basic search. This is where you're just searching for one animal, and then there is a sire search and advanced search. Sorry, just quickly, I just realized I didn't ask if there were any questions about the animal profile. Is that all clear to people? Did anyone want to ask any questions? I see someone's remarked about roans being solid. I'm sorry, that's the policy, the uniformity versus the pattern. Great, all right, so let's go searching. Thank you for the feedback. So basic search, I'm just going to search for a burrowing animal because I am logged in as Fiona. And I can see here all of the animals that are found. Now, one of the first things you're going to notice is that animals that are sold are still appearing in this list. What we've done is we've actually made the default for searching be a list of all animals regardless of status. And this is because sometimes people get confused about animals that are dead and don't appear in results, and they're just trying to do a genetic review. You can change that in the advanced search and be more specific, but just in the general search, if you're quickly searching for an animal, you'll always find that animal in this list. If it's on the system, it'll be in this search. So this is the search to use if you really want to find a specific animal. The other thing to note is, all right, I'll keep moving. So sire search. Sire search has, this is an opportunity for use as a new search. Oh, sorry, yes, I was going to say, in My Animals, when you're looking at your own herd, only the animals that are alive are showing. So the dead animals are actually removed in My Animal View because you want to see the animals that are in your paddock. But in that general search, they are all animals. So if I search for the animals in Onyx, these are the sires in the Onyx herd. And you'll see there that it's sorted by default by the number of progeny. So this is the most regularly used sire in the Onyx herd, and that it is multi-owned. So this is just a way, again, of if you're looking for a particular sire to mate with, you know the herd that you'd like to look at, then you could use this search to have a look at that herd, get a sense of what sires they have available, and then you click through, look at the progeny it's throwing off, and see if it's throwing off the kind of progeny that you would like to be emulating. So that's the sire search. Finally, the advanced search. This is the one that I think is most exciting, and hopefully you will find it pretty useful too. This lets you search in any way you want to do. So this is the slicing, dicing, all empowered search. What I'm going to do is I'm going to search for animals that were born after 2014. I'm going to search for sex is certified male, and I'm going to search for color type is solid. So these are all the animals that were born after 2014 that are certified males that are solid. So there's 72 of those that match, and I can have a look at those and see what's going on. So you can make that search as specific as you like. You can search for not things, so we could search for how many certified males are there that aren't solid. There's 24 of those. So you can change those criteria in any way that you like to drill down and do a very, very specific search. Again, you could search for animals that are alive or not alive, so we could say status is active, inactive, dead, suspended, sold, or exported. So very specific searching. You can search by an animal whose parent's name or animal's name. So there's a range of fields in there that you can search on with open text as well. By owner location, so if you're looking for a sire in your region, all of that searching is available there. So hopefully that'll give people the power to do the very specific searches that they want to do from either a curiosity or a breeding point of view. All right, so we've covered the animal searching, animal viewing, and animal editing. There is one other kind of editing that I wanted to make you aware of, and that is the herd inventory. Now, the first time that people come into the system, they're going to see a little box on their screen. I have turned that off for this purpose, but I will include it in the slide deck just so you know what it looks like. But essentially, it's going to be a big box that fills up about half of that screen saying you haven't done a herd inventory yet. And we're going to require everybody to do a herd inventory before they can do transactions. So you'll be able to search, you'll be able to view, you'll be able to otherwise kind of use the system in an inactive sense. But if you want to register an animal, if you want to enter a show, if you want to transfer an animal or anything like that, then you need to have completed your herd inventory first. And the reason we're doing that is because a lot of animals are actually not up to date in the current registry because people haven't been able to edit that information themselves. So things like animals that are dead or animals whose true colour is different after the first shearing, all of that information, as I showed you in the editing screen, you'll be able to do yourself. And this is what the herd inventory looks like. So not only can you do this yourself, well, you'll be encouraged to do this the first time you log in, but from the My Herd link, there is actually a herd inventory link there that you can do at any point that you want to. So if you've had a whole bunch of events in your herd, you could go back and do a herd inventory. It does the same kind of editing that Animal Edit does. It just lets you do it in bulk. And so this is just a quick way to update your entire herd. So the things that you can change in the herd inventory are the color type and the colors, its status, and its sex, particularly if you have made it a wether. So this just gives you a chance to quickly go through and fix up your herd. Some people will get feedback on this screen that requires them to make a change. So one of those pieces of feedback is that an animal over 25 years of age, we're going to mark as presumed dead, and you'll need to tell us whether we're correct that it actually is dead or whether it's still alive, because some animals can live up to 30, but most of the animals in the registry that are over 25 years have actually passed on to greener pastures. So the colours are probably the thing that are most useful for you to change, but you can change anything else there. If you submit this page, the herd inventory process is finished. We regard you as having submitted one. But you can still come back and fix it up later. So if you just want to fix the compulsory ones first and then come back and do the optional ones, that's fine. If you want to do the whole process at once, that's fine. And if you want to do it in chunks, that's fine too. So if you've got 500 animals and you want to do 100 animals in groups, that's fine. And we will also encourage people to do a herd inventory on an annual basis as part of joining back as a member. So once again, I'm just going to pause and check in whether you have any questions. I know I'm talking fairly fast, so it's going to give you an opportunity to breathe and ask me any questions. No questions? All right. So now that's the basic process of editing for animals. Oh, thank you, Sean. Will there be a prompt for annual herd inventory? Yes. It'll be the same kind of screen that comes up in there otherwise. So let me just do something quickly. if I now go back. So that's the prompt that you'll see on the homepage there. So it's a nice big friendly welcome, and because this is your first login, or on an annual basis, because you have just renewed, a herd inventory is required. And so, as you can see, they can still access all the functions of the system, but it's just a very strong prompt to let you know you're going to need to do that herd inventory before you start using the system for registrations. One other comment I should make is that that's only going to happen when the system goes live. So people won't need to do a herd inventory to enter into the spectacular, the AAS. They will just be able to use, as I said, only the show part of the system. And so they won't have to do the herd inventory because they won't have access to that part of the system. So now, on the next thing that we're going to do is that we're going to explore animal registration. So this is probably the most used function in the system after searching. And again, that's why I've got a button for it at the top of the screen. Whoops, okay. All right, there was one I prepared earlier. I'll explain that one in a sec. But typically, if you click on that button, the first thing you'll see is this screen here. One thing I just want to highlight before I get into the animal registration process is there is a bulk upload function. So you'll see in the top right-hand corner there, bulk upload, and that lets people upload a CSV file. So the page, I'll just load it quickly, does actually explain the full CSV format. So if you've got a herd registration system or even a sophisticated spreadsheet where you keep all the information about your animals, you are welcome to just upload that spreadsheet to our system and you will end up on the summary page that I'm about to show you rather than having to fill in the information field by field. All right, so the first thing you'll see on this screen is that at the very top, we're going to ask about the parentage of the animal. There is a sequence to this registration process, which I'll explain as I go through why we're asking some things before other things. So the first thing we're going to ask for is the dam. The reason that we're starting with the dam is that it may be the case that this dam has a sire authority already registered for her. And if so, then we won't need to ask you what the mating dates are and who the sire is because that'll be in the system. But in this case, we don't actually have a sire authority registered for Elysian Layla, and so we'll need to fill in the mating date, mating from date, and the mating to date, and then we'll need to choose the sire. Now, one thing I do want to show you is when I'm typing in an animal's name, you'll see that it comes up with what we call type ahead. It's a bit like Google Suggest. So when you're typing in the Google search engine, you'll see that a list of suggestions comes up on the screen below what you're typing. The important thing to tell members about this is it's much, much more useful to enter in the distinct part of the name than it is to enter in the herd prefix. So if I had typed Birong in here, I would get 200 results. But if I type pickpocket, then you'll see that I only get 2 results. So it's much more useful to be specific about the name than it is to be general, unless you're not sure about the animal's name, in which case, by all means, type in the prefix, and you'll get that full list to scroll through. And so I'm going to choose Bumble Hill Pickpocket, and you'll see here, coming up on your screen, that there is a little button below. So earlier I mentioned no sire authority in place for Elysian Layla, and yet we're mating with a sire outside of our herd. So unfortunately, the people who own Bumble Hill Pickpocket must have forgotten to register that sire authority for us. So we can just say, perhaps I arranged it with the Fifers. I can send an email right now to Colleen and Richard, and they will then be able to respond to that email with a single click and say, yes, this sire authority that Nathan's just filled in for Layla and Pickpocket is a real sire authority, and I approve it. And that's all that Colleen would need to do to actually make that registration happen in terms of a sire authority. So we're hoping that where people do get stuck waiting for sire authorities, this will make the process happen a lot faster. Okay, I'm just going to change that away from Bumble Hill to Elysian Pickpocket, which is owned, oops, spelling mistake, owned by Birong. So this is now a sire that is in the same herd, so we won't need a sire authority. And I'll explain why I'm doing that a little bit later. So the next thing to fill in is the date of birth. And so you can type in the date of birth, or you can use the date picker. Now, one thing to be aware of is, you'll see here, we're trying to guide people to get their information correct. And so where we think there might be a mistake, we give you feedback with these little warning pop-ups. In this case, Elysian has already had a dam within 8 months of this date of birth, and so that's going to be an error unless it's an embryo transfer. So I'm just going to mark it down as an embryo transfer, and that'll take that conflict away for us. You'll see further down on the screen where the creator's name is, that's actually added an ET to the name automatically for us. And that happens similarly for twins. So I've entered in the date of birth, and you'll see that the identity number has been filled in automatically. We know the herd code, we know the year letter from the date of birth, and we've guessed the drop number from the last animal that you registered. So if you register incrementally, we'll just add 1 to the last number that you added. If you reset each year, then on January the 1st, we'll go back to the number 1 and start again from there. So we just look at the history of how you've done drop numbers and try and guess the next one for you. But you can change that if we've guessed it wrong, and just go ahead and make it whatever you need it to be. All right, the next thing I wanted to explain on here is the breed, Surrey versus Wakaya. You'll see that Surrey is selected. This is not a preference to Surrey owners. This is because the sire that I chose, Elysian Pickpocket, actually is a Surrey. So whatever breed the sire is, that will inform the breed that we choose by default for the cria. And that's just to save on people making errors. So if you have Wakayas and you're breeding Wakayas, that default for you is always going to be a Wakaya. And if you have Surreys and you're breeding Surreys, that default is always going to be Surreys. And hopefully you won't have to change it very often. Sometimes you may, but that default is probably the one that's least likely to result in errors. The next thing I'd like to explore is something called an inactive male. So you're familiar with male registrations and female registrations. We've got a third class called inactive male. So we estimate at the moment there's probably around 400,000 alpacas in Australia, but there's only 180,000 in the registry. Part of the reason for this is it costs money to register animals. What we're looking at doing is encouraging people to record all of their animals, and then when they know whether they want that animal to be a breeding animal or not, they can upgrade it. So this is an inactive male registration. It will cost nothing. So it just records the fact that this dam and this sire had some progeny, and it enters that animal into the system. The animal can't be transferred, it can't be bred with, and it can't be shown. So it's in the system it's recorded in the system, but is not a registered animal. And the way that we know that it's not a registered animal is it doesn't have an IAR tag. So you'll see down here in the IAR tag field that that field is actually blocked out. And we've guessed at a name for the cria, so we've just called it inactive male, year letter, drop number. You can change that if you like, but probably you may not change it until you actually get to the point where you want to register that animal, and then you would click that upgrade button that's on the animal's profile screen, and you can change its name, you can add an IAR number, pay the registration fee, and it's now a fully recorded male that you can breed and show with, presuming you do the DNA work if you want to breed. So that's inactive males. Again, we're just trying to make the registry as comprehensive as possible. I'm going to change it now to be a male, because I want to be able to choose a name and an IAR number. So this is Birong Fluffy because I've got another Fluffy there that I'll show you shortly. And now IAR tag numbers, we've heard a lot of feedback from people who had somebody who typed in their IAR number accidentally. So they swapped a couple of numbers. Suddenly when it came time for you to register your animal, you couldn't type in that number because it had already been used. And so you've got to fix it up with the office, and it's all a bit of a hassle. What we're doing is they're actually keeping track of all of the IAR numbers that have been allocated to you. And so if I type in 300 here, you'll see I get a drop-down list just like when I was typing in an animal's name. And this helps me to choose the right, so these are only IAR tags that haven't been used yet, so it makes it quick for me to choose the right one, but it also protects me from accidentally choosing somebody else's one. First question that you're going to get when somebody says the IAR tags, what about if I've got some animals on my property that aren't my animals? How can I manage that? So the answer to that is they can give you agistment rights in the registry. So in their profile, they just say, I give my agistment rights to this person, and then from then on, the person who has the agistment rights can use their own tags, or they can use that person's tags. So It's not meant to stop people from doing the right thing. It's just meant to help people get it right when they need to. Sandra, you've asked if can this be changed? I'm not sure if you're talking about IAR tag numbers, but if you do have a bunch of numbers you've got from other people, perhaps they've retired from the industry and passed them on to you, that's fine. Just call up the office and they can fix up the allocation and make sure they are allocated to you or the people that you're registering for. If that wasn't your question, feel free to ask again. So optional NLIS ear tags, optional field, and microchip number, optional field. Colors, exactly the same as we were talking about before in terms of editing colors and being solids versus non-solids. So I'm going to register that animal. You're going to see now on your screen that two tables are going to come up. One's in green, that's a positive color, and the other one's in yellow, it's a little bit of a warning. And so the reason that we've got two different screens here is because we've got two different kinds of registration. One, the SIRE authority is all done, we're all happy and we can go, and we're ready to pay for that animal. So you can see at the very bottom of the screen, it says registration's ready to submit, one, total registration cost $20. The other one, the one up the top, is not yet complete because we're still waiting for that SIRE authority. And so when the FIFAs come through and click on that email that I sent them, then that one will actually go green and I can pay for it. So that if people if they are waiting for SIRE authorities, I'll see those two. Otherwise, normally people will just see all the green. As I said before, if you go into the bulk upload function, you'll just get that green table of all of the animals that you've added in, assuming they're all ready to be registered. If there is missing information, we'll give you some feedback. But that's a table you'd see after a bulk upload. Then finally, once you've agreed that all of that is correct, because you could have gone back and edited from that screen if you had made a mistake, then you can go onto this summary page that basically tells you how much you're going to be paying and asks you a question. Yes, thank you, Abigail, great question. Do you get a notification that the SIRE authority is completed by the stud owner? So as soon as the FIFAs push that yes button on eAlpaca, you will also get an email that says your SIRE authority has been approved. And so that's the prompt for you to go back in and complete it. But if you are not an email reader, you'll also get up here on this little envelope a little number next to that email thing or envelope thing that tells you that there is a transaction now waiting for you. So they've finished their part of the transaction and it's now waiting for you to finish. All right, so now we are looking at the select certificate preferences part of the screen. And what this means is, as you can see from my earlier presentation, earlier in the presentation, you can get a digital copy of the certificate. And so there really is no need for you to have a electronic copy anymore. Sorry, you've got an electronic copy, you don't need a paper copy anymore. So what that means is that you can get them by post, or you can just download them directly from the screen as I showed you. If you do want to get them by post, there is an additional fee. And so you'll see now up on the right-hand side of the screen, because I've selected by post, I've actually got a postage and administration fee. All the fees that you're seeing in the system as I work through are indicative. They're not real fees. It's just to show the system as it's working. The real fees will be released when the system is released. And there is some changes to the fees. There will be some bulk discounts. So if people register, for example, 50 Kriya in a year, the 51st Kriya through to the 100th Kriya will actually be at a discounted price. And again, this is to encourage everybody to register all of their animals. Really want to make it easy and encourage people to register. So the pricing scheme will also reflect that. So that is the basic information around the registration process. And if I then proceeded to payment, I could go through and pay online. I'm not going to do that because I'll show you that later on the show system. So that's the registration process. Did I have any other questions around the registration process before I move on to the animal transfer process? Great. All right. So we are. So normally you would finish that payment, you get a nice friendly payment success screen, and you'd have your left navigation again. But because I'm skipping that, I'm going to have to use the logo in the top left corner to go back to the home page. Just one thing to be aware of is that if people do leave a screen halfway through, it still is there for them to go back to. So If I now go back to the register animal screen, you'll see that those transactions are still there waiting for me to act on them. So the information is not lost, it's all there, and that would be available to you as well in the transactions in progress waiting for you section of the system. So now on to transfer animals, and that's on the top right-hand side of the screen. I'm clicking on there, and you'll see a bit of here's one I prepared earlier. So I've got a couple of animals ready to transfer, and I can choose another one. So I'll choose Alabaster Kid Clue, pop him into the list. Oh, he was already in the list. Okay, well there you can see you get feedback if you get it wrong. Let's another one. I'll just choose a Biron and get the list. All right. All right, but anyway, once we fix that problem, you'll be able to add any animals that you like to that list, and then you get to choose whether the buyer is a member or not. And so if the buyer is a member, you'll be able to just type in their stud name. So I'm going to type in eAlpaca, which will get me Ian, and then we're away to doing that. If they're not a member, we need you to type in their name and address, but we must get their email address. And the reason we must get their email address is this is how we're going to identify that they who they are when they register. So when you're doing this kind of transferring, you are transferring to somebody else who either is already a breeder or is going to become a breeder. If you were transferring them out of the register, so sold out of the register, you would use the animal edit function and choose that sold setting, and they would be off the system, and that's not a transfer, that's a sold out of register. If you are transferring though, you must get an email address from them. Thank you for the great question. Carolyn, if they don't have an email address, then they need to find somebody who has an email address and use that email address. The reason we need the email address is because when they come to register as a member, they'll have to have an email address then because they can only log in with an email address. We need to know who they are so that we can give these animals to them so they can finish the animal transfer process. So that's why we need an email for this. But if they're not becoming a breeder, then you're doing a sold out of register and it doesn't matter. But if they are becoming a breeder, they're going to be going on to eAlpaca, they'll need an email address. So that's what we need to make that process work. The other thing is that if the buyer is paying, we also need an email address because we've got to send the buyer the notification to pay so that they can actually pay and complete the transfer. If the buyer is paying, the animals will be removed from the seller's herd immediately. So even though the buyer hasn't paid, they will no longer be sitting in your herd. So your herd will reflect the animals that are actually in your paddock. And I know that isn't the case for many of you right now. And so what happens is that they're transferred into the buyer's herd, but they are transferred in a limbo state. So they can't be transferred again, they can't be bred with, and they can't be shown. They're in your herd as the buyer, but until you pay that transfer fee, they will just be there in that kind of limbo state. So Jane has asked a question. If there is a system outage at any time and we can't access the live system, who do we contact? A great question, Jane. The national office will be offering support for the system once we go live. So once we go live, they'll have processes to respond if there are any issues. From our perspective, as the providers of the system, if it does go down, then we will be, first of all, we'll be monitoring it to know that it's gone down. But the second thing is that we'll also have an information page there to say why it's gone down and when it's coming back. So if it's not just a simple problem that we can fix immediately, then we would have a status page there that says, here's what happened and here's what you need to do, or come back in half an hour or come back tomorrow. And obviously our profuse apologies, but hopefully that won't happen. But if it does, we will have some processes around that. But members in general should contact the national office. All right, so that's the transfer process. I'm just going to go back to making it a member and buyer pays. So, and we'll click next to process that. And then we can see that we've got two transactions here. They're going to be paid for by the buyer. And we can process that transfer and they'll be taken out of our herd and put into read-only mode in the buyer's herd until they make that payment. All right, so I'm going back again to the homepage, and I am now, does the seller have to complete the transfer info? So the seller is the one who's filling in that screen. So thanks, Jennifer, for that question. And if they, so they're the one who's filling in all that information on that screen, if that answers your question. But yes, they need to complete that. If you are dealing with a case where you've got the animals and the seller hasn't done this process, then you can actually talk to the national office and they can act on behalf of that member to make the process happen. But it is the seller that needs to initiate the process. Otherwise, you could say, well, I'm going to buy, this big stud from this person and initiate the process, and I don't think that would work so well. So no, the buyer can't initiate the process, but as I say, if it is stuck, particularly for people who are leading the industry, then the national office can assist with that. I have said the national office a couple of times. When I talk about the national office, I mean AAA. So I'm talking about Joe and Jeanette and Liz in the office in Mitcham. They're the people who are providing the support to AAA members. So we'll only be providing support to the association and that's only for technical issues. So if you actually have usage questions, once the system has gone live, then they will be going to the national office in terms of people being confused or needing support or having transactions operated on them on behalf of a member. That's all going to be done by the AAA office. But if you actually have a system failure, you'll still be talking to the national office, so Joe, Jeanette, and Liz, and then they will forward that on to us and we will fix it. That happens once we go live. Right now, if you guys as trainers have any problems, you can contact me directly. Although, as I said, I prefer you use that trainer mailing list because it just means that everybody sees the questions and answers. Thanks, Sean. All right, so now I'm back to the home page, and we're going to go into shows, and we're going to do the show exhibitor workflow. So I'm now clicking on the See More button on shows, and you'll see as it comes up on your screen that there are 3 shows listed. Hawkesbury, the Sydney Royal, and the Australian Alpaca Spectacular. So the only one that's really open for entry is the Australian Alpaca Spectacular. The other ones are just for us to do some testing on. So this is the show largely as it will really be on the 7th of July. One thing that will change is the schedule. So if you look at the schedule at the moment, you'll see that's not a real address. They're still working on publishing that, but that'll be up in a week or so. And then everybody who wants to enter the Spectacular will be going through this process. So they can see the basic information about the show and how to send in fleeces. They can see that the convener on eAlpaca point of view is Paul and Fran. So if they need any support, that's who they'll be contacting. So again, for the Spectacular, if members need support for the Spectacular only during this period, they will be contacting Paul and Fran and not the national office. And then we can see the entry fees and the classes that will be in this show, which we'll explore more in a sec. All right, so the first thing, and just because I've done some testing, this says continue, but normally this would say begin your show entry. And you can see that there's a couple of buttons here. One says continue your show entry, so this is the entry that I've already started. And then there's another button that says begin a new show entry. And this is because you can enter on behalf of other people, so you can act as an agent for them. So if I just click on continue your show entry, what you're going to see coming up is the first page of the show workflow, which basically is basic information about you. So your name, your phone number, your email, and your postal address for where you would like any information about the show to be posted to, or for the Spectacular, where you want your shirt posted to. And so that's the basic information there that you can edit if you need to change that. And then if you are acting as an agent on behalf of somebody else, then you can actually fill in this box. And so this would say, I want to be an agent for, let's say I want to be an agent for Ian again, and I can choose Ian, and then the rest of the workflow will be for him, but I don't want to do that in this case. In this case, I actually do really want to be me, and so I'm just going to go on to the next screen. So the next screen is, and again, because I've played a little bit with this, these checkboxes are all turned on. Let me just turn them off. Yeah, okay. I'm getting warnings because I've already entered some animals in here. But essentially, you would start and you would turn on whichever classes you want to be involved in, and that will then direct the rest of the flow of the show entry system. So, and now you can see up the top here the various functions that I have available to me. So if I turned some of those classes off, that would make some of these pages unavailable. So the workflow is 10 steps in total, but it's only 10 steps if you turn everything on. If you do turn some things off, so let me just turn off fleece classes and choose next, and you'll see that the fleece classes are unavailable to me because I've turned them off. I'm going to turn them on just because I want to show you everything in the process. All right. So if I now enter an animal, alchemy, and so the way that dates of birth should be working is that, sorry, the dates of shearing is if you have entered this animal into a previous show, we'll be using the shearing date from that previous show for that animal, so we'll remember. If you've entered a previous animal, then we'll be using the shearing date that you used for that previous animal, so it should be the Layla's one. And then if there is no date on file, then we'll be using the date of birth as a default one, and then you can change it from there. So there we go, we've got 2 animals in our halter class, and I'll now go on to the next screen, which is halter progeny. And so this basically lets you say, I've entered in some animals, so they're the ones on the right-hand side there, and now I'd also like to enter in the sire or the dam of those animals into the progeny class. So this is halter progeny, and there is also fleece progeny classes. So we're going to put in Birong Patronus into the sire's halter progeny class entry. Fleece class entries, pretty much the same as a halter, except that we also have the date of prior shearing. So the first date of shearing and then the most recent date of shearing. And again, it gets added to the table. And there's just a little prompt, just because for some people that is off the screen, a little prompt at the top that says it's been added to the table. So I'm just going to go back, actually. I just want to show you quickly the code for the class for Layla is a summary of what it is. So it's a white senior Suri, and that's reflected by that code, WWSO. And O for, if it was male or female, it would be M or F, but it's for fleeces, the sex doesn't matter. And then if you hover over it, and anywhere on the site where you see that ... if you hover over it, we give you some more information. So you might have seen earlier in the searching, we abbreviate the colors to the standard AAA colors, like SWT for solid white, but if people don't know what those abbreviations are, they can just hover over it and we'll tell them the full text. So we're just doing that to make things fit onto the table, otherwise the table is very long across people's screens. So this is the fleece progeny class entries, and so in this case I'm going to choose to pop Leilani in, and so now I am onto the last class entry screen, which is miscellaneous classes. So these are the junior judging, junior handling, and parader classes. And I am just going to pop in my favorite friend, Tester. So she, I did enter the wrong date of birth. So she's now in the table, and then other entries can also be put in there. I'm not quite sure why she's free. Right, and now we're on to the extra show costs. So there's 2 kinds. Oh, someone's asked a question. So animals, fleeces get put into the correct classes. Thank you, Sandra. That's a great question. Yes, thank you. The classification happens automatically. So whatever the details are around the animal in terms of its age and its fleece and when it was shorn, in the case of a fleece class, will then determine where the animal is classified to. For this first show, there is a risk that some animals in the system are actually incorrectly categorized because their colors are wrong. So for this show and this show only, people will also be able to edit the actual, and I didn't show this, but So go back to halter class entry. You'll see there's an edit button here, and you'll see that I can actually change the color of the animal in the show. So if the animals are getting misclassified because the registry is wrong, they'll be able to fix that here by changing that color. And they can also fix the last shearing date or the prior shearing date if that was wrong. So that's just a mechanism for this show only. After this show, people will have full access to the system, and therefore they can edit the animal directly in Animal Edit, and then come back in here and re-enter the animal to get it classified properly. So yes, it automatically does the classification. Hopefully that will make life a lot easier for both members and also for convenience. Extra costs. So we've just given people a guide at the top around the number of pens that you need. The reason we're not making this a requirement is because we're aware, particularly if you're bringing a small number of animals, you might be sharing a pen with somebody else. So we just prompt you at the top to say, look, you said you're bringing 3 animals. Currently, you don't have any pens. We would suggest that you need, at least 1 pen. And you'll see that now I've chosen a pen. That little information box has gone away because I've got a single pen for my 3 animals. Everybody's happy. Or I could have chosen a double pen. I might also choose an electrical outlet, and I'm definitely going to choose one of those fancy spectacular shirts. And the dinner sounds delish, so I'll do that. And everybody who's coming to Spectacular must make sure that they come to the launch lunch, because that's where we're going to talk about the system to members. So please pop yourselves down for those. If you do have any special pen requests, for example, penning your animals with somebody else, you can pop that in that box there. And then we're off to actually get to the payment process. Before you pay though, and before we even get there, you will need to put in your pick and your herd. Because we've entered animals, if you don't enter animals, you won't need to do a health declaration. But if you have entered animals, you'll need to do this. And so I'm just going to pop in. So I'm not sure if you noticed there, I'll just pop out again. There was some guidance around picks. So just in case people aren't clear, for somebody in New South Wales, it is a letter N followed by 7 numbers. Oops. 4, 5, 6, 7. And because Ian and Fiona are in eAlpaca already, we've chosen that as their default. But if they weren't in eAlpaca, that option wouldn't even be available. And you can still choose another one if that's more appropriate. So if you were in MN3, you could choose that. You have to indicate that you know your animals are healthy and that you're going to follow the show rules. And then you can click on the Submit Declaration button, and that just confirms that you are agreeing with all of those rules. What you'll see starting to come up on your screen now is a summary of that entry that we've just completed. Carolyn, Sharon's asking, does the state initial letter default to my state? It does. So each state has different requirements. Some of them start with a letter. Victoria starts with a number, 3. And so that little prompt will come up differently for different people. But hopefully, again, that's something that people will only need to do for the Spectacular. After that, they can edit their own member profile, put in their picks for their property, or properties if they have multiple ones, and then that would be automatically filled in for you. So again, it's just information that we don't necessarily have on file. We have got it for some people, but not everybody. And our pick is NH246. Is that 9 characters, Carolyn, for your pick? No, we'll have to fix that. I thought it was only 8 in every state. Good to know. Yeah. So, but if there are any problems with picks, we can certainly fix them. If a member doesn't have a pick, does this prevent them from showing, Sandra? Great question. I actually don't know. That's a question for the shows committee. I will ask Paul, and he can get back to me. But at the moment, I thought that everybody who was involved, but maybe it is state-based, so maybe in your state it's not required. Certainly, thanks Abigail. She's saying in South Australia you must have a pick. So it may depend on states. But I think for the Spectacular, well, if you're coming across state lines, you'll need a herd health declaration anyway. So we'll see. Yeah, some people you're supposed to, but some don't. It's probably a policy question. At the moment, the system does require that people fill one in, but we're not validating them, so perhaps people will make them up. I don't know how to handle that. I will leave that for somebody else to solve. All right, so this is a review of the show entry that we've done. So we've put in 2 halter entries. We've put in a halter progeny entry. and that is a free entry. And then I've put in a fleece entry. Oh, I didn't show you, so let's do that now. So I can go back and edit if I made a mistake. And I'm going to edit this one because it says most valuable fleece no. Oh, because it wasn't a Wakaya fleece, and Durham doesn't have any. Okay, if I was logged into somebody who had a Wakaya herd, then when I chose the Wakaya animal, a new box would pop up that would say, do you want to enter into the most valuable fleece category as well? And if so, then I could, that would be an additional entry, but I can't do that because no Wakayas. So that's there. So there are no most valuables. The fleece progeny class entry there as well, again free. Miscellaneous class, so a friend tester is in there, and then the total fees that we can then go to proceed to payment. So I'm going to click that.
Proceed to payment. And once we click proceed to payment, we see the shopping cart. So the shopping cart is a mechanism to let you do multiple transactions before you actually go to the payment gateway. So you could do a show registration, animal registration, animal transfer, and then pay for them all at once. We've just got the show entry to pay for, so we're going to go ahead and pay now. If we were going to do other transactions, we could keep going on before we did that. So this is the payment screen, standard credit card information. All payments in eAlpaca will be through a credit or debit card, and then you, at the moment, click on this sandbox test button. There'll only be one payment button when we go live, but for now this will give you a free transaction, so you don't need to fill in the rest of the stuff. And you can see there that our payment has been successful.
What I'll do is I'm going to go across to our production system, and I will be able to show you the most valuable fleece as well, because I believe Paul has some guys. All right, so step 2. I'll turn on fleece. Don't worry about miscellaneous. Turn on there. So I'm just quickly getting in to show you 2 things. So first of all, that is a Wakaya. So you see now on the bottom of my screen there is that most valuable Wakaya fleece. And so I'm just going to select that. My screen's being a bit funky because it's so large. And then I must have a fleece state that's valid. So what's the sure in 2011? And I really think we need to get rid of these date figures. All right, and 04, 11, 2013. All right, so that was shows. Transfers we've done. Okay, so the transactions, I'm not sure I actually showed you the transactions waiting. So you can see because, so I clicked on the envelope up there, and this is the transactions that are waiting for me. You'll see at the top there that there is that spectacular entry. Because I haven't paid for it, it's still waiting for me in ready for me to pay in my shopping cart. And there are other transactions there that are waiting for me. If I go back to the home screen, I can also do a search. So this screen is now a list of all the transactions, the ones that I have started and the ones that are waiting for me. And I can search by the various transaction types if I want to get more specific. But you can see really particularly of interest for us, because we just did this, further down the second row in that table, there's an entry for a sire authority. And that entry went to the FIFAs, and we know that that was for the registration that we did just earlier. So you can see that it's there, and you could, you know, if you needed to, call up the FIFAs and say, hey, can you please have a look at the reference 236378 and respond to that one so I can finish my registration if they haven't seen their email. So that's the transactions process. One other thing that I did want to cover just before I go to general questions and answers is that a number of the processes will be available online that aren't currently online, and one of those is the that's not the one I wanted. it's that one, is the processes that vets are involved in. And so if you, normally at the moment, these processes are completed solely on paper, and some vets would like to be able to do this online, and we're going to encourage you to be able to do all of this online if you would like to. We're not going to make the vets do it, but the ones we've talked to so far are actually quite positive about it. And so what that would mean is they could take the piece of paper with them, or they could take an iPad with them when they do SIRE certification, fill in the form online, complete it, and it's all done straight away. Obviously, you've still got to do your DNA sample separately, but that just makes it a bit easier for vets. So what you'll need to do as a member, if you do want your vet to be able to do things online, when you come to make a request like this for a SIRE certification, then you would need to request that on the first time. You'd need to request that this vet be registered on the system. So you type in some basic information about the vet, and then the system will then email the vet to make sure that they're happy to complete that registration. Then that registration will go to the national office, so the AAA. They'll review it to make sure that it's a legitimate vet, and then they will approve it. And then from then on, that vet can interact on the system directly to do DNA certifications, to do postmortems for eAlpaca, and to otherwise respond to the things within the registry. So not general herd health, but just the request processes in the registry. You can renew and upgrade in the system. You can join in the system. So if you weren't a member, you'll see on the login screen there's a link there to join. And what else is important? Oh, you can edit your profile. So that's all those important things. I think I have covered all the things that I need to cover. Are there any questions? Can you register a vet clinic? So thank you, Abigail. Yes, you can register a vet clinic. Well, the way we're actually looking at it working, because we realise the vet may not do the paperwork themselves, it might be their practice manager. The reason that so the way that we're working it is you'll register the first person in there, then when they come to complete that, the practice manager can then add, additional vets for it to have. So the clinic will be identified, and then additional vets can be identified under that clinic. So if it's Bill that's doing your animals today, but it's Jane that's doing them next week, that's fine. And if Bill goes away on holidays, then Jane can also finish the process that Bill would have otherwise finished. So yes, it will have a sense of a clinic being one entity that multiple vets can respond to. For this to be a useful contact point, it seems important that, so Sean's asking about if member details have been correct. Is there a prompt to do an inventory on one's own profile? There isn't actually, Sean. It's a great question. So we, at the moment, there is up there in the top right-hand corner that capacity for people to edit their profile, but we aren't necessarily requiring people to do it. Perhaps we should. When you renew, though, it will be part of the member renewal process. So if you are doing your annual renewal, one of the steps will be to look at your profile information and review it. So at least on a 12-month basis, people will. But it's probably worth us encouraging people also to do it when they first log into the system when it goes live. Are there going to be training sessions for conveners? We've had far fewer questions from the convener perspective this time than we did in the last webinar. So yes, there will be a session for conveners. Paul and I are discussing the logistics of that now, but it may well end up actually just being a video rather than necessarily a webinar, because different people are going to watch it at different times and they may need to watch it, down the track. And so we'll put that together and just walk through the basic functions for setting up a show and also for managing a show. One of the things that's important to know for conveners is that you will have full control over that information, including, like the administrators, the ability to act on behalf of a member. So if you're the convener of the show, you'll be able to log in and do all of the things that the member could do in that show workflow as that member. So if they got stuck, they can call you up, you can finish their entry, or you can edit their entry, or you can amend their entry. Yes, Sandra, there will be a recording of this session. Unfortunately, the previous session did not record properly, but this one has been recorded, and I will be publishing it online. I think that is all of my questions. And Fran and Paul did jump in and say, everyone must have a pick. That's the rules, but you can dummy one to enter. but people should be replying for real ones. So perhaps probably there'll be some kind of interim period where we're not checking that pics are valid, but at some point we probably will be checking that it's a real valid number, and at that point people will need to have a real one. That was pics for show entries. Thank you, Abigail. How do I access eAlpaca for training demonstration? Great question, Jennifer. So we're not quite ready for training. If you're about to do training in the next couple of days, please contact me and we'll need to do something special for you. We'll be ready for training in July, and it will be on the staging system. So not the system you're using right now, but we have another system because obviously on the 7th of July, members will be using this system to do their registrations for the spectacular. And so we'll need to put you on a different system so that you can edit animals and mark them as dead, which might interfere with people's show entries otherwise. All right, I think that's all of our questions. So just one comment. You do now have access to the show exhibitor workflow as well as the animal search on eAlpaca. So if you can go through that show workflow, I'm hoping that everyone can go through that in the next few days. I will send out an email. And once everyone's had a chance to go through that and give us some feedback, we'll then give you access to the functions that I've gone through today. There will be some parts of the system that we don't make available to you just yet because we're still working on them and we just don't want you to trip up on some issues like I have today, unfortunately. Yeah, so we just want to make it a smooth experience for you. Thank you very much for your time. Look forward to continuing to talk with you. Feel free to send any questions you have to the eAlpaca trainers list, and we will respond to them as quickly as we can. Yeah, so Sandra, if you want to log in, the details are to log in to eAlpaca.com.au. I'm not sure if I zoom in on my screen, if that also zooms in as on yours. I don't think it does. So I was just zooming in then. But if you, yeah, so if you log in to eAlpaca.com.au and then your password is fluffy face paint, as I emailed you the other day. So eAlpaca.com.au, fluffy face paint. You'll see that you've got the access to that shows and also to the animal search that you had yesterday. Thank you very much. I'm going to end the session now. If you do have any other questions, feel free to email them through, and we will talk again soon.